Welcome back, everyone. So today, if you'll notice, I've got my little psychedelic background back here again. And you know what that means if you've watched any of my earlier videos. It means I'm back to do album reviews or album rankings again, where I rank the discography of a band that I listen to. Haven't done this in quite a while. As a matter of fact, it's probably been several months. I got caught up doing top 10 lists and a couple of other series that I've started, and so I kind of fell back on doing my album rankings, so I'm going to try to get back into that. And what better way to start with what is considered to be the greatest pop rock band of all time, the Beatles. So as you can tell by the description, we're going to be discussing the Beatles discography. So I'm going to be ranking the Beatles albums. And let me go ahead and put this out there right now. These are not my choices for the greatest Beatles albums of all time. These are my choices for what I go and listen to the most. So if you disagree with it, that's fine. I mean, I would love to hear your thoughts, but please don't shout me down or tell me I'm wrong for not liking one album over the other one, because it's just my opinion. You know, it's just what I like to listen to. So anyway, we're going to start with the Beatles released 13 albums, 13 studio albums. That's what we're going to be focusing on. None of the compilations, no re-releases or no live albums. So only the 13 studio albums. So in saying all that, we're going to start with the least choice of mine, and that is the debut album, Please Please Me, from 1963. This is, British pop with that garage 60s production that I really like. I really enjoy that 60s production. It's the Mercy beat, sort of the Beatles, very youthful, raucous, frolicking, lively sound, on this album. Excuse me. There's just a lot of good pop on this album. If you like, 60s pop, you can't beat the Beatles. I mean, they are just the masters of it, just like they mastered the psychedelic music later on in the 60s. They are a lot of people consider them to be the boy band of the 60s or whatever. There were a lot of boy bands in the 60s, but the Beatles were musicians. They played their own instruments. They were quality musicians, not just singers, not just performers. So that is the number 13, Please Please Me. Got some great songs. I Saw Her Standing, Love Me Do, Please Please Me, of course, the title track. So number 13, Please Please Me. Coming in at number 12 is going to be, you're kind of going to laugh for a little while, because this is going to be almost an evolution to it gets to a certain point. But coming in at number 12 is going to be the second Beatles album, which was With the Beatles. Again, released the same year, 63, British pop. Kind of the same stuff that you're going to get on the first album, except for, I believe, I hear a little bit better production than the first album. Very playful, very youthful album for the time. Very warm. This is, Beatlemania is starting to get warmed up a little bit here, so this is getting into that still pop rock, still that British Mercy beat type sound, but a little bit better production, a little bit more songs that I enjoy on this album. So number 12, With the Beatles. Okay, so number 11 is going to be the last album the Beatles released. And actually, Abbey Road should have been the last album the Beatles released, because a lot of these songs were recorded before Abbey Road. It was just this album was released after Abbey Road. I hate this camera. Anyway, so coming in at number 11, Let It Be. Let It Be. very contemporary sounding album. I call it the McCartney album, even though, you know, it does have John's material on it as well. But, you know, Let It Be, Long and Winding Road. It just sounds like a contemporary album. It sounds like something, you know, Paul, or more like Paul would have released in the 70s than John. So I just, I enjoy the album, and I go back and listen to those songs from time to time. It is the sort of, I think, scraps, you know, that were thrown together. I know that sounds like I'm putting the album down. I'm not. I do like it. I do listen to it. It's just not one of my favorites. So that would be number 11. Number 10 is going to be Yellow Submarine. That, you know, they're fully in their psychedelic mode at this point. I do love the song Hey Bulldog. I love all the songs. I love the film. It's one of my favorite animated films. I own it. I own some of the action figure or collectible type things. My daughter loves it. My kids love the film. I love the film. I love the album. It's just, there's only one side with Beatles songs on it. And, you know, the second side, don't get me wrong, I do listen to the second side. I do listen to the instrumental sort of score. But, you know, it's just half a Beatles album as far as I'm concerned. So it comes in, you know, a little bit lower. So that's going to be, where are we at? Number 10. Uh-oh. You know what that means. Number 9. Number 9. I had to do that. This is the Beatles. Come on. So, okay. So, number 9. I think that's right. Let me see. 3, 13, 14, 12. I think I've lost count. I may have said it wrong. Let's see. 13, 12. 13, 12. You can tell math was my subject. 11, 10, 9. Yes, we are. Number 9. Okay, it is A Hard Day's Night. Again, it's that Mercy Beat 60s Brit rock sound. Free will in this album. A lot of energy, but, you know, there's some yearning as well on it. There are a lot of songs that seem like they are, you know, yearning, and I think it's the Beatles, analytically, I guess if we could say it's the Beatles, you know, yearning as well to change. They're changing with the times. If I Fail, Can't Buy Me Love, Hard Day's Night, a lot of great songs off this album, a lot of great pop rock songs off this album. I do listen to this album. I go back to it and listen to it. I enjoy it, you know. But yeah. Okay, next album is going to be released actually the same year, I believe, as Hard Day's Night, and that is Beatles for Sale. Again, 60s pop rock, the British rock, AM pop sort of mod sound. This one, you know, with songs like No Reply, 8 Days a Week, I'm a Loser, things of that nature, it's a little bit more anguished, I think, than the previous Beatles album. A little bit more angst-ridden here. It's very earnest. A lot of energy in some of the songs, but it's very bittersweet. But I listen to it and I like it. And so, Beatles for Sale. Okay, so the next album, I believe, is number 7. God, I'm losing count. I don't care. Okay, the next album. Number 6, released in 1967. This one is the Magical Mystery Tour. You know, I consider this is like the Beatles at their incredibly psychedelic, just, I mean, they're tripping balls or something on this album. Magical Mystery Tour, I've always because it was released the same year as Sgt. Pepper, I've always, thought this album was like a companion piece to Sgt. Pepper. Hello, Goodbye, Strawberry Fields, Penny Lane. The cover's kind of silly. It's not one of my favorite covers. Don't really like it at all, but I do enjoy some of these songs off this album. It's the Beatles at their most psychedelic. I consider it to be, like I said, the sister to Sgt. Pepper. It's just nowhere near as good as Sgt. Pepper. But I do love Strawberry Fields, and I do love Penny Lane. And it ranks a little bit higher than Yellow Submarine, of course, because it's a full album of Beatles stuff. There's no way they could have done this, tour back then. This is a studio magic type album. The psychedelic effects and everything, but it's a quality album. I like it, but it is where it is. Okay, so next in line is going to be, let's see, where are we at? Number 6? Whatever. I'm so tired of trying to count. I should have numbered it, but I didn't, so I'm not going to bother you guys with my numbering system anymore. Okay, so next is 65 album, Rubber Soul. Reflective, very stirring, very searching sort of album. I think this is when the Beatles you can feel the sort of the psychedelic droplets on this album, even from the album cover and the font. It's the Beatles starting to get into that psychedelic type of stuff, but yet they're still in their folk rock sort of guitar sound, but they're just kind of getting into that a little bit, with stuff like Nowhere Man and Norwegian Wood, sort of the folk rock stuff. But If I Needed Someone, I love that song, such a great song. But yeah, this one's something I'd listen to like in the autumn, in the fall or something. It's just one of those albums, like there are these albums you'll listen to this is a nighttime album, or this is a summertime album or whatever. This is a fall album. This is just something I would listen to then. So that is Rubber Soul. Okay, so the next album in line is probably, we're hitting the top 5 here, but this is probably where you guys are going to throw tomatoes at the screen and hate me and unsubscribe and all this. Okay, the greatest album of all time, most psychedelic album, the most progressive album, the greatest studio album, the biggest hit, Sgt. Pepper. Look, guys, I love Sgt. Pepper. It is an album that I would go and listen to just to have that sort of album feel. I love it because it's an album you'd listen to that you want to listen to the whole thing. And so when I'm in the mood to listen to an entire album and I want to hear all the little intricate details, I will listen to Sgt. Pepper. I love Lucy in the Sky. It's one of my favorite songs by the Beatles. I love A Day in the Life. A Day in the Life's probably like in my top 3 favorite songs by the Beatles. But, I just like some of these albums a little bit more. Some of these other albums that I'm about to mention. But Sgt. Pepper is a masterpiece. There's no doubt. There's no denying it. It is. But to me, it's not one that I go back and listen to as much as these top 4. Oh God, see, I told you guys. Never let me do a math quiz for you. Okay, so number 4 is going to be a little bit controversial because I put it over your precious Sgt. Pepper album. Really, guys, I do love Sgt. Pepper. I'm not putting it down, I swear. Help. I love this album. I'm sorry. I mean, Help, Hide Your Love. You've got to hide your love away. Such a brilliant song, a little pop song by John. Gosh, Ticket to Ride. I mean, this is one of the best songs. I mean, it's a pop song, but it's just so good. I mean, it's just so good. Help. Dun, dun, dun. Love the progression in that song. I mean, there's not a song off this album that I don't listen to. When I listen to Help, I listen to it. I listen to the whole album. You know, it's still the Beatles in their British invasion 60s garage sound, but it's good production. It's a very good album. Why do I feel like I'm having to apologize for this? I don't. Help. Number 4. It's a fantastic album. No apologies. Okay, so number 3. This is hard because these 3 albums they could be interchangeable. Well, at least the second and third could be interchangeable. But Revolver is number 3. This is the first Beatles psychedelic album as far as I'm concerned. This is the first album that they absolutely opened the doors to psychedelia. It's a 1966 album. It has my favorite Beatles song of all time, Tomorrow Never Knows, as the ending track. I love Dr. Robert. I love Eleanor Rigby. I mean, it has George Harrison's The Taxman. It's a fantastic album. It's one of the greatest rock albums of all time. And to rank it third, I mean, this album could be better than most bands' first album. But again, there's a couple more albums that I'd put above it. And again, number 2 and number 3 could be interchangeable. It just depends on what day it is for me. But Revolver is just, it's the Beatles experimenting, but it's still so accessible. Where there are songs on Sgt. Pepper that I don't consider to be very accessible, even though they're very psychedelic and very progressive. Revolver was. It was that mix between the Beatles pop sensibilities and the psychedelic exploration that they did. And so it's going to rank high for me, and it has my favorite song on it, of course. So, number 3, Revolver. Number 2, and the only reason that I rank this one higher than Revolver today is because it's a double album and it has many, many, many songs on it, and I like most of them. It is probably their most progressive album since Sgt. Pepper. But the reason I rank it higher is because it's got more variety. It's not just psychedelic. It's not just pop. There's such a variety of music on this album, and such a smorgasbord because it's a double album. It has so many songs, so much variety. It's raw in some places. It's not overproduced. It is a masterpiece. Again, it is. Sexy Sadie, Helter Skelter, Blackbird, Back in the USSR, and of course I'm talking about the White Album, or the Beatles. While My Guitar Gently Weeps, one of George Harrison's just fantastic tracks. But my favorite song is probably Dear Prudence. I love this song. I love the production. I love the drum. I love the bass, the guitar track, John's voice. This is a perfect song. A perfect song by the Beatles. And this album is just chock full of songs, full of variety. There's something on here for everybody. If you like rock, hard rock, it's here. If you like whimsy, psychedelic stuff, it's here. If you like pop, it's here. If you like folk, it's here. whatever you want is on this album somewhere. There is a song that you will like, if not many more. So that leaves number one. And I'll be honest with you guys. I love the Beatles and I love all their albums, but nothing will ever take the place of my number one album. And that is Abbey Road. This album, again, like the White Album, is full of variety. You've got psychedelia, you've got pop, you've got guitar rock, you've got the greatest love song ever written, probably by George Harrison, Something. You have experimental, you have progressive, and you have Paul's granny music. You know, all in one album and without it having to be a double album. Every single track off this album is a quality. Even Ringo's hits on this album. I'd like to be under the sea in an octopus's garden. I mean, it's even on here. So, I mean, that's something that should have been on Magical Mystery Tour or something. But this one, it has everything. And it's not a double album. It's condensed, it's compact, it's got everything. But the thing that sells me on this is production. This is probably one of the best produced albums. I mean, if you're an audiophile, Abbey Road is the Beatles album to listen to. But now let me stop. Abbey Road is my favorite for a different reason, because Abbey Road has followed me my entire life. Abbey Road is a personal album for me. It touches every aspect of my life from my childhood until, this morning. Everything about this album is my entire existence. And it will always be my favorite Beatles album. It is one of my favorite albums of all time, and that will never change. Coming in at number one, Abbey Road. Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to do some more album reviews for you shortly, and I'll also do some more top 10s and blah, 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 and other things. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Make some comments down at the bottom. Let me know what your favorite Beatles albums are. Anything like that. If you like it, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, share, anything to promote my channel. I really appreciate it, guys. So thank you for listening, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.